All right, it's time for another Law and Order JA. And the question that was sent in today reads, Hi, I would like to remain anonymous. Hide my ID. I have been going to the same health facility for years to treat AIDS, which I was diagnosed with 10 years ago. I, however, just found out that the facility had a major data breach. I am deeply worried that my private medical records have now been exposed. What is the facility legally required to do in this situation? What can I do to get some recourse? Join us, well, that's the question. Joining us to tackle this question is attorney at law Chantal Bennett. Chantal, welcome.
Thank you. Right.
Now, this is an area of law that is garnering more and more attention as we become more aware and sensitized to the Data Protection Act and just the responsibilities of organizations where data protection is concerned. First of all, the first question I'd want to know is, when you look at a question like this, where in the law do you seek to go to find answers first?
Thank you for that. Good morning. You go to the Data Protection Act. Mm-hmm. That is the legislation that was passed, which outlines the obligations of patients as well as the health facility as it relates to protecting the data of patients. Mm-hmm.
So by virtue of their job, they collect people's very personal data. What responsibilities does the legislation place on an entity that collects people's data in this regard?
That's an excellent question. So in this circumstance with the health facility has a responsibility to collect and store that information in keeping with the data protection standards. Now, in this circumstance, where there is a data breach, the health facility has a responsibility to provide a notification to the patient within 72 hours of becoming aware that there has been a data breach. And in this notification, there should be certain information. One, it should state the date that the breach occurred. It should also indicate the nature of the breach. And in providing the nature of the breach, it should indicate what type of data has been, what type of data is the subject of the breach. And in that circumstance, it should indicate what steps the health facility has taken to mitigate against the breach.
So I'm trying to establish how. So we've established that they ought to, but like, what is the manner that would be sufficient? So for instance, if it is widely reported that a breach took place at XYZ medical facility, I know that you have data from me there at XYZ medical facility, but I don't know if my data was in the cache of data that was affected.
Right.
How are they supposed to identify and notify every person individually, or put out a press release and that's enough?
All right, so the health facility has two obligations. As mentioned before, it has an obligation to every single patient that has been affected by the data breach. So they actually have to send a notification. If it's 100 persons, to those 100 persons. In addition to sending the notification to each of those individuals, it has an obligation to notify the Office of the Information Commissioner. The Office of the Information Commissioner is the regulator. And in that notification, the health facility would indicate that the data for 100 patients was affected by this breach. This is the nature of the breach. Sometimes it can have a cyber incident, or there might have been a mistake where the data was sent out to the incorrect person that should not have received the data. Right. So each individual has to be notified that there's been a breach. If you're unable to contact that individual, then you could use, for example, you were speaking about if they could do, I assume, like the newspaper or something to that effect. You can do that as well if you're unable to contact the person directly.
All right, come talk truth. Suppose it's not like a big breach. Suppose like I was just supposed to send it to you, but I end up sending it to Michaela. So nobody really know, because it's not like it was a hacking or nothing, but I sent it to the wrong person, and now she has seen everything. And I may call her, and she says she deleted it, but she saw it.
Well, she deleted it, but she saw it, and the fact of the matter, it's my personal data or Mr. Anonymous' personal data, and it has been shared with someone that it should not have been shared with. So there has been a breach, and you have to report it. If you don't report it, you could face a penalty or some other consequence from the Office of the Information Commissioner. So there's no baby breach or any little breach.
The fact of a breach is sufficient.
Yes.
Yeah. What then, how important, in your opinion, is the role of the Information Commissioner then in all of this?
Okay, well, as a regulator, the role of the Office of the Information Commissioner is very important, as that regulator is here to guide the different health facilities, the public authorities, me and you as individuals, as to how important our data is, the fact that that baby breach is not a baby breach, and also because there's so much to be done. I think the Office of the Information Commissioner rather has been very understanding and explained to us individuals and companies that the steps that you need to take in order to properly process data, to register when you're processing data, to store that data, and how you go about protecting that data. So her role, or the role of the regulator rather, is very important.
So Chantal, there are persons now who are saying, but we not problem, because we may not be a health facility, but we, by the nature of our job, we take in people's personal data a lot. You mentioned systems, and you mentioned systems being up to standard. Like, then that means I need to know, do I need to hire a Chantal Bennett? Because I can't afford to take her from Duncox and have her work here every day. So how does it work then now, having like a data protection officer to work with my company or my organization to ensure that our ducks are in a row?
Okay, so once you're taking in information, you're what we call a data processor, and you're required to register with the Office of the Information Commissioner.
Okay.
Depending on the amount of information, data that you're taking in, and whether or not you're a public authority or you're a health facility dealing with what we call sensitive information, then you're required to have a data protection officer.
Okay.
So everyone, as I understand it, is not required to have a data protection officer, but where you're taking in significant amount of data and it's sensitive, like health data, you need to have a data protection officer. What the officer does, the officer is independent, and the officer assesses the procedures and policies in place to ensure that you're adhering to the Data Protection Act. So earlier you mentioned, there is a lot of data and how you manage it. You can employ Duncox, or you can employ any other data protection individual to do an assessment to see what are your policies and procedures, how can they be improved, how can we implement new policies and procedures, and also have training for your employees. So it's a process, and it takes some time, and a lot of entities have been working towards it, and the Office of the Information Commissioner has been very understanding in just allowing entities to follow the process and for it to occur over a period of time.
And you would not recommend somebody like in your IT department, you just say, yo, you're the data protection officer. You wouldn't recommend that?
For each entity, you have to assess who should be the data protection officer. That is where you need a data protection officer. That person has to be very independent. Yes, it could be the person in the IT department, but you also have to ensure that that person won't have a conflict, because they have to be independent.
So they can't be checking their own work.
Exactly, precisely.
I got you. Thank you very much for this conversation. You really opened up our eyes to a very important aspect of the law. Our guest has been attorney at law Chantal Bennett, walking us through a heavy but necessary conversation. Well, coming up next, the St. Mary Farm Queen is heading to the Sunrise Couch. You won't want to miss it. Stay with us.